Right now, many people all over the world are understandably terrified of coronavirus. It might not seem that the ancient Stoics who lived more than 2,000 years ago would have much to teach us about this modern problem. But of course they do, because in the year 165 AD, Marcus Aurelius' empire was also swarmed by an infectious disease that nearly upended the Roman Empire. It was called the Antonine Plague, and despite the distance of so many centuries, it's eerily similar to COVID-19. This pestilence spiraled east, west, north, and south, crossing borders, then oceans, as it overwhelmed the world. People panicked, doctors were baffled, government officials dawdled and failed, travel was delayed or rerouted or aborted altogether. Festivals, gatherings, sporting events, all canceled. The economy plunged and bodies piled up. The plague in Marcus's time began with flu-like symptoms, fever, headache, fatigue, nothing that could give you too much cause for concern, but then it escalated. Black rashes, scabbing, coughing up blood, internal rupturing. It was so gruesome and painful that you were glad that death came in less than 5 days in most cases. It had a mortality rate of between 2 and 3%. 10 to 18 million people died. The Roman Empire looked more like a battlefield boneyard than a prosperous world power. And the people looked to one man, the emperor, Marcus Aurelius. What should we do? First, Marcus Aurelius said the people had to remain calm. Bear in mind constantly that all of this has happened before, he wrote, and all will happen again, the same plot from beginning to end. And so we ourselves today in the modern world will get through this. None of this is new. We've been through this before. We've always been at the mercy of enormous events outside our control. We've always been carrying a fatal infection. There's no problem so bad, the Stoics knew, that we can't make it worse also. Part of Stoicism is accepting that a lot of what happens in the world is outside of our control. Stoicism is a philosophy that shines brightest when the outlook is darkest. Just look at Marcus in this crisis. He stood bravely. He did everything that he could. Marcus stayed in Rome, even when all of the richest people in town fled. No one would have expected this from Marcus, but that's what he did. He stayed. He had no ego. He had a keen eye for surrounding himself with shrewd operators who could help him solve the problem. He listened to advice. He empowered people to make decisions. He put the best doctors in charge. Marcus Aurelius sat down to address the growing economic crisis of his time. Long-standing debts to the government were canceled. Fundraising efforts were kicked off with a masterstroke of inspirational leadership. He conducted a sale of the imperial treasures, everything from gold goblets to crystals and chandeliers, but also silk robes and his wife's jewelry. Reluctantly but unavoidably, Marcus Aurelius conscripted capital from Rome's upper classes, knowing they could afford to pay. He audited his own officials and allowed no expenditures without approval. He knew that trust in the government was essential, and he would not violate that trust. Certainly no one would have faulted Marcus if he fled Rome. Most people did, but Marcus stayed at enormous cost to himself. He braved the deadliest plague in Rome's 900-year history, never showing fear, reassuring the people. He was Churchill during the Blitz, inspiring everyone to keep calm and carry on. He'd locked down his citizens, but not his doors. He summoned priests in every sect and doctor of every specialty. He toured the empire in an attempt to purge it, using every purifying technique yet known. He attended funerals, he gave speeches, he showed up. And he felt deeply for those who suffered. There is a famous story of Marcus breaking down and crying when he heard someone say, "Blessed are those who have died in the plague." Marcus was strong, but that didn't mean he didn't feel for others. He led Rome through this crisis which stretched for some 15 years, never hiding or neglecting his duties. And inevitably he did become exposed. And when he knew he only had a few days to live, he sent for his 5 most trusted friends to plan for his succession and ensure a peaceful transition of power to his son. Bereft with grief, these advisors were almost too pained to focus. But Marcus reproached them with taking such an unphilosophical attitude, Frank McLean, one of Marcus's biographers, writes. They should instead be thinking about the implications of the plague and pondering death in general. And it's here that the past provides a valuable lesson. Far too often, we only realize how fragile we are in crises. There is no amount of fleeing or quarantining the reality of human existence. Memento mori, we are mortal. No one, no country, no planet is safe or as special as we'd like to think. We are all at the mercy of enormous events outside our control. We can go at any moment. Marcus was constantly reminding himself of this, and being reminded of it, he made sure that this thought shaped every choice and action. Be good to each other. That was his prevailing belief. A disease like the plague, he said, can only threaten our lives. But evil, selfishness, pride, hypocrisy, fear, this attacks our humanity. Which is why we must use this crisis as Marcus did, to remember the core virtues that the Stoics want us to live by: humility, kindness, service, wisdom. We can't waste time. We can't take people or things or our health for granted. Even if we lack the leadership that Marcus Aurelius did, even if we're not in charge as he was, we should and must cherish what matters. We should and must be good to each other. Hey, thanks for watching Daily Stoic. If you want to learn more about Stoicism, you can check out some of our other videos here. Subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Keep learning, keep studying, and remember those 4 Stoic virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom.